Chapter 16, 16 Evolution Grove 1. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, and folks, welcome to this month's special recruits auction, a man's voice boomed through the large halls. The walls were nicely finished and cleaned up, with a well-lit and rather loud atmosphere. I kid you not, we have some incredible goods here today. The audience was mostly male with some higher-class women involved. The rows were neat and filled to the brim, people of vast professions, of all classes, government employees, merchants, citizens, businessmen, and nobles. Though at the very front were the true VIPs. The ones surrounded by black-suited men. They were dressed quite flauntingly. 4 astronaut-looking people. They had glass domes on their heads for their own air to breathe and wore white suits all over their bodies. Their eyes held great pride as if everything around them was all but worthless. A noble of a major country? Just another ant in their eyes. They are the celestial dragons, 4 of them. The auction was about to commence while the early proceedings were wrapping up. What the people involved didn't know was that a wanted man was traversing through the storage area. The long hall was dark, lit by some large lamps above the central walkway. It was dry and damp, a few droplets of water trickled from the roof and onto a puddle. The atmosphere was humid and simply void of both noise and vibrance, it was like walking through a field of dead and withered flowers. Damien's red eyes glanced through the tens of cells with hundreds of soon-to-be slaves. Many expressions clouded their faces: anger, despair, rage, and pain. I thought I had moved on from my previous life and completely committed to this one, the young man thought as he stood lost. Slavery? A heavily frowned upon notion. Age, gender, and race are all up for cash. Something like this happened in my previous life and people would rise against it, and yet it's the norm here. Damien wasn't questioning the truth of his new life, but rather himself. The one-piece world, under the adventures and vibrant lands, was full of tragedies and broken people. Damien had tapped into his past persistence to train like hell, but his mind had yet to graduate from that kindness. Tap. Dull footsteps broke out as Damien reached for the cage. He looked in and saw some eyes. One emotion shined through, the brightest of them amongst them, hope. Such silent and helpless eyes left the pirate to ponder. Damien had committed himself to reaching the peak of power. And yet he lacked an opportunity to leave it all behind. From what he could see, his past life was getting in the way of his choices and perspective of this ruthless world. It needed to be left behind, a necessary evolution. Clatter. A dull clattering resounded in the quiet prisoned halls as a bundle of keys fell before the one hopeful prisoner, a child. To bid farewell to my old life, I will free you all, he muttered. It can be considered my final act of kindness and pity to fully accept my new existence. The prisoner's hand shot out as the keys wildly jingled, as if fearful to waste even a second. Click. The locks clicked open as the child ran out from the chains and the collar around their neck, rushing out. The keys were passed along as the would-be slaves plagued out of the halls. Rumble. The ground shook as a handful became tens and tens became hundreds, the prisoners all running out and grasping and clawing every moment to escape from their misery. Damien just watched from the side, seeing all kinds of desperate looks from the would-be slaves. Such weakness left them prey for the predators. Bam! The doors blasted open as 8 guards came in, rifles drawn. If they couldn't recover the goods then naturally they would need to put them down. They cocked their weapons and aimed to shoot. Yet under all the chaos were 2 crimson eyes. Slowly but surely, they began to clear up and become firmer than ever before. Damien's mind had let go of some chain that shackled him down, as the churning ambition began to blossom. From now on, I am Einar D. Damien, a pirate, and nothing more. Rumble. Upon his words came a screeching wave of energy, the ground under Damien's feet cracked as the waves rippled out. The guards suddenly felt the weight of the world pressing down on their shoulders and very minds. Their eyes rolled back into their skull as their knees weakened. Thud. One by one, they all fell. Dropping like flies, swept away. Damien felt the release of some inborn power, his hands subconsciously reaching out to bathe in the feeling. The emptiness and relief left a need to breathe. A need to revel in his evolution. This is Conqueror's haki, the young pirate muttered to himself. Damien was about to leave but soon felt something afoot. A shadow of a child remained in a cell. Dead in sleep. He then heard the heartbeat, and something else. Yawn. It was an awfully comfortable yawn. One you'd make after waking up from a nap in school. Is it morning already? A dull, young voice broke out. Jingle. The boy soon got up from the ground and slowly walked to the front in curiosity about the changed environment. Ara. Things look a lot different from how they were a few hours ago. He had a sleeping mask pulled over his forehead, and the scruffy afro-like hair seemed dirty. Droopy eyes still waking up. Damien felt something familiar about the boy's demeanor but he couldn't put his finger on it. The keys are right there, you can walk out of here if you're stealthy enough, Damien casually said. The child looked at the ground and saw the bundle of keys. It looks like a lot of work to go through them, can't you just pop off my shackles? You look quite strong, Mr. Pirate. Damien smiled with intrigue and walked to the cage. Creak. The metal bars groaned as they were bent without difficulty and ripped open. Boom. The door was thrown into the wall and they crashed into a cloud of dust. What's your name, kid? Damien asked. Tab. All the while his left hand grabbed the cold collar around the boy's neck. Ring. A subtle ringing broke out as the device seemed to activate. The ringing was getting faster every second. The child woke up fully as some tension overtook the lazy eyes. On second thoughts, I'll take my chances with the K-dash. Damien hummed at his words before he could finish as a mass of crimson energy bubbled in his palm. The energy wrapped around in a string and was quickly inserted into the device. Grr. The inner gears growled as their core was crushed and destroyed. Zib. The air whistled as the collar crumpled from its solid form and off the child's neck. Damien casually tossed the metal scrap behind himself as it went off in a resounding explosion. One echoed in the now empty halls as the dust and debris rained down. The kid fell to the ground with a thud, his forehead swamped with cold sweat. Damien smiled at the physical response, no need to thank me. The boy raised his face with annoyance, thank you? I almost became the youngest documented case of a heart attack victim because of you. Damien showed an innocent face and gave a small shrug in return, hey, you're the one who said I looked strong enough to free you. He then walked out from the dull cell and readied himself to leave. The kid ran out with some excitement, wait, how'd you rip metal like that, that was kinda cool. Damien was walking out of the hall at this point as the young stray peppered him with questions. Are you really a pirate? Do you have a pirate crew? Why'd you save us? Are you an ability user? Can I do that too? Damien massaged his temples and gave out a sigh, maybe I should have left you in there. The pirate soon stepped through the doors back into the auction hall and saw an unexpected sight. Even the kid trailing behind him paused in his steps. Gulp. The young boy gave an audible gulp as his eyes frantically blinked, hey, Mr. Pirate, this is a big deal. And it was. Some of the freed prisoners had found themselves here, no, rather they especially wanted to come here. The halls were empty and certain individuals were targeted by the prisoners. Ones with enough prestige to even cause Damien to pause. Damn celestial dragons, you took my daughter and chained me up when I came for answers, this is what you deserve. Give me back my wife. My son came back broken because of you, pay for it with your lives. There were at least 50 of them. The men in suits were long dead. They looked as if they'd been mauled by a pack of hungry wolves. It was incredible what a group of enraged individuals could do. Having their lives ruined or their parents and children ripped away from them, leaving broken minds living off vengeance. Ah! Damn ants, you know who I am. My arm. The world nobles endured the slow and painful torture as the freed prisoners simply clawed at them with every ounce of anger. The boy shook slightly, his breathing spiked as he saw the display. Such anger can turn them into monsters, animals. Damien hummed at the display and nodded in agreement. The kid was about to ask something again but this time Damien answered before he could even speak. They've resolved themselves to die once the Marines arrive, if anything, they're treasuring every moment they get to torture these nobles. The child nodded, some grief in his eyes. Damien watched the expressions of the boy who interested him. You didn't tell me your name yet, kid. The black-eyed boy with the scruffy hair was awfully familiar. A name came to Damien's mind but he waited for the confirmation. And it too, came. My name is Cusin, just Cusin. Marine Ford. Fleet Admiral's office. Catcha. A transponder snail hung up. A different roar soon broke out. How could this happen? Kong clenched his rusty and scarred fists. Boom. The desk of the Fleet Admiral was soon reduced to dust as its owner's fist descended upon it. A Rear Admiral ran in and saluted. "Yes, sir. I just checked and most of our forces are deployed. Yes, should I recall some?" Kong eyed the Marine and slowly shook his head. A deep sigh escaped his mouth as he uttered, "Basara is responding to the Golden Lion's rampage at G1 and Masao is deployed to keep Borealis in check considering his recent antics." Kong then reclined into his chair while dialing a number. Puru, 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 Puru. Catcha. Kong-san, did something happen? Kong hummed with a low growl, "You recently took on the mantle of Admiral, I never meant this mess to be your first endeavor." The voice on the line paused for a second and came back on, "I'm ready to depart right away." Kong nodded in satisfaction, "Sail to Sabayati immediately, we lost contact with celestial dragons." The voice once again paused. "Kong-san, we've received news on the rocks pirates also making waves there." The Fleet Admiral shook his head. "Yes, but the priority has changed, your mission is the nobles." The leading Marine then leaned forward to the snail. "Sengoku, no matter what, we can't lose face with celestial dragons at Marie Joyce, do what must be done, I'll send that unruly brat to head your way too." The reply came fast as the call soon ended. Grove 1, Sabayati Archipelago. The entire surrounding zone, and even the nearby groves had been emptied. Not a soul left, only tracks of running and escape. Got it, shucky nay, I'll head there right soon. Damien hung up his snail. He then gazed at the kid in front of him. Image of Kuzan, in Discord. The two stood near the edge of the grove, right next to the open sea. You got over the mauling of those dragons quite quick, Damien said as he glanced at the boy. Kuzan looked at Damien and slowly said, I did some stuff to get chained up, and saw some bad stuff too. He then looked to the sea, my father was gonna sell my sister and me, he died before it could happen but I got caught nonetheless. Damien sat beside the boy. He died. I killed him. But he had already contacted the buyers, I was able to get my sister to a small family who lived on the same island, but not myself. She's only 2 years old and probably will forget about me in a few years, but at least she can grow up in a nice house, right? The boy soon wiped his face with his sleeve and shook himself out of the old memory. Even under those chains a part of me wanted to become a marine one day, give the oppressed a voice. And yet you were saved by a pirate, Damien chimed in. Now, you're lost. He nodded silently. A few moments passed as he then asked, what is your reason? Why become a pirate? Damien shrugged, you're the second kid to ask me that. I just want to be the master of my own fate. Even if you have to kill for it. A determined light flashed by the pirate's eyes as he said, if they get in my way, then yes, without hesitation. Damien slowly stood up as he patted the non-existent dust off his attire. How about I give you the chance to find your path? The boy's lowered head soon shot up to meet Damien's in question. Damien just smiled, I'm no saint but I do what I want. I intend to gather some like-minded people one day under my flag. As long as you don't go against me, I'll let you figure out your moral compass. The boy blinked in thought, but he was a little too young to fully see the big picture. Perhaps it's a little risky to invite a future admiral but it is a power I rather not go against. I also got his devil fruit before, is this another quirk of fate? Damien thought. Kuzan, don't think too much, I won't give you any handouts, just a place to train, hellishly at that. You can choose your path from then on. The boy's eyes soon began to clear up. What if I choose to leave? Damien just shrugged, no handouts, you get what you earn. I'll show you what the world hides from its everyday people, you can decide your fate then. Though at this point, his calm tone turned sharp, and if it goes against me, well, you would be wise not to get in my way. The 7-year-old broke out with an audible gulp as he saw Damien's smile. He then cleared his throat, I agree. But I can at least rest often, right? Maybe 14 hours a day. Bam! A fist slammed onto the child's head and he rolled on the ground in pain. 8 hours of sleep is enough, this training guide should help you understand what's to come. Damien unconsciously showed a rather sadistic smile as he handed the sheet of paper that appeared out of nowhere. Kuzan schemed through. Each line, each training routine brought an increasing amount of fear and apprehension to the boy's eyes. This should be the torture routine, are you sure you're not insane? Damien shrugged. A wise man I once knew, like myself, would say, a small price to pay for salvation, you'll get used to it. Kuzan shook his head and dashed away. Unfortunately, a vice-like grip grasped his jacket as he flailed around in the air like a dying fish out of the sea. Don't worry, if you meet my expectations then I wouldn't mind giving you a suitable prize. He then kicked something into the sea. Splash! It was a wrapped-up, bloodied figure of a celestial dragon that Damien had borrowed from the prisoners. Rawr! A Loch Ness monster-like sea king soon popped out from the water as it roared its arrival. The giant figure of the beast was gnawing away at the white-clothed noble all the while it glared at the two in front of it. Damien eyed the beast and a burst of overwhelming weight soon fell upon it. The Sea King shuddered and whimpered as it swallowed the celestial dragon whole, though stuck in place. Damien just glared at the sea monster and gave out an order. I want you to send this kid to Mortem Island a few days away. It was a mixture of Damien's newly conceived conqueror's haki and voice of all living things which allowed him to command the weaker Sea Kings. Mortem Island was one of the many less than ideal locations Damien found through his years of study. No inhabitants. Unforgiving weather. Countless monsters. Endless threats. Perfect place for a near 7-year-old to thrive in their youth. But some precautions were needed for him to get there safely. If you in any way allow harm to the boy then I will personally feast on you in front of your children. The beast seemed to make a familiar audible gulp and it comically nodded its head. Damien hummed at the response and tossed the boy in his hand as if he were a sack of potatoes. Hey! Kuzan landed on the Sea King's back, barely keeping himself on board. I swear I'll sue you for child abuse one day. Damien waved at the whining boy, good luck on the training, I'll make sure the Sea Kings properly educate you if you don't put your all into it. Kuzan gulped once more as he began to question his life choices. He saw them disappear into the horizon, leaving the lonesome Damien behind. A white paper that inched forward was soon pulled out, leading the way to his next destination. Looks like it's time to go meet up with the rest, I wonder what hell will meet us soon. Ding ding. The cabin door creaked open, ringing the bells at the top. The 20 feet tall doors were quite the sight. It was the first time Damien had seen such an inclusive door design in the One Piece world, well, to an extent. Damien made his way through to a dimly lit bar, under the noisy interior. Damien scanned the audience and it didn't take long to see where he needed to be. It wasn't just the ginormous 19-foot-tall Kaido who was gulping down alcohol, or the tiny Shuki who was sitting beside him leaving quite the physical contrast. It was instead the other man who sat at the same table. He was seated but it wasn't hard to see that he was even larger than the 17-year-old Kaido. He had loose, grey trousers, an open green shirt that showcased his muscular upper chest, and a durag over his long, blonde hair. The giant pirate boasted a glorious mustache in the shape of a wide U-shape. An equally large glaive leaned by his table as he drank some sake. Damien paused for a second as his mind instantly clicked on a name. Edward Newgate, the future world's strongest man, aka Whitebeard. His image, in Discord. The pause only lasted a second before he continued to the empty seat at the same table. You're here, Damien-chan, Shuki smiled. Whitebeard leaned forward a little as he lowered his alcohol barrel. Narrowing his eyes, he said, you're the kid who made all that noise just a while ago. Rox really sees me as a babysitter for the brats that interest him. Damien looked at the giant in front of him. Even though he said some annoyed words, his smirk carried another meaning. The young pirate simply shrugged, the Marines knew of our meet-up here, trouble was bound to appear anyway. Tap. The sake cup in the overpowering man slammed on the table. An eerie silence broke out that even the nearby pirates began to sweat. And yet something unexpected followed. Gururera. The nearly 22-foot-tall pirate broke out into a rambunctious laugh. You're right, I'm sure Sengoku's golden ass was waiting for us anyways, I wish I could see his face when he sees what you did. Shuki sighed at the mess and shook her head, boys will be boys. You got all the eternal ore. The eyes were soon diverted to Damien who was sipping on some alcohol. He nodded while waving a red pouch around, all here. Shuki gave a small smile and then gestured to the others, we should hurry to Fishman Island, starting a war right under Marineford is too risky. Newgate slowly nodded after stopping his laugh, with the mess at Grove 1 we won't have too much trouble sneaking away. Shuki nodded in agreement, the ship is coated and ready, let's go. Kaido just gave out a loud scoff, I'd rather take the chance to kill the Admiral right now. Maybe when you can take a punch from me and not get knocked out, Newgate responded as the others stood up to leave. Kaido grumbled but accepted the reason, ready to leave. Damien and Shuki also made their way out to the readied ship. Grove 1. Kong-san will not be happy with this mess, a rather tall and bulky man muttered. He was a man draped with the usual marine coat, rocking a black suit underneath. He had a black afro and mustache paired with black circular glasses. A Marine Rear Admiral saluted the prestigious Marine, Admiral Sengoku, the Sabayati forces are at your disposal, would you like us to scour the archipelago to find the perpetrators? According to sources they have dispersed all over. Naturally, he talked about the freed prisoners who mauled the world nobles. Sengoku image, in Discord. Sengoku shook his head, there were 4 celestial dragons but we only found 3, where is the final one? The Marine reporting had no answer. We have no clue, it seems Saint Wilhelm disappeared, may be kidnapped for ransom by a pirate. Did you try their Vivre card? The Admiral questioned. The Marine in front of him looked to the ground in shame. What is it? Sengoku said with a turbulent feeling. Admiral, the celestial dragons didn't have Vivre cards made. Sengoku blinked and broke out in tension, what? How could that happen? The Rear Admiral shook in his socks but answered immediately, and no one has killed a noble in a long time, they've grown used to not needing such precautions. Sengoku sighed defeatedly, then let's hope the saint was indeed kidnapped and not anything worse. Until then secure the archipelago, no one leaves without my notice. Roger that. The Admiral was about to leave to report but another Marine soon came running over. Admiral, he exclaimed between bated breaths, we located the Rocks pirates, their ship is coated and readying to leave. Sengoku turned his attention immediately to the tired Marine. According to some unconfirmed rumor, the prisoners were freed by the Sin Incarnate who was also spotted on the departing ship, the Marine reported. Sengoku, who is also known as the resourceful general, naturally had some thoughts with this information. If he was responsible, then he may have kidnapped the celestial dragons. Rox has a certain delight in harming the nobles, there's a chance the saint is with them. The Rear Admiral then gave his thoughts, should we encircle them? How troublesome, Sengoku massaged his forehead in indecision. Keep your eyes on them, and notify the Marine unit at Fishman Island to maintain surveillance at their arrival, I already have 3 dead celestial dragons, I can't risk another dead. The Rear Admiral saluted the order and began to notify the Marines under him. And where's that fool? Sengoku questioned, though he soon felt a bad feeling. An answer soon echoed in his ears. He's what? Edge of Grove 50. A coated ship was moving towards an open area. Coating was a process in which a ship was coated with special resin from the Yarikaman mangroves, enabling it to sail underwater and survive the crushing depths of the ocean, such as at the bottom of the Red Line, and therefore, to Fishman Island. Kaido was playing with the steering wheel, earning a scolding from Shuki, who was seemingly doing everything. Damien sat at the lookout tower and soon felt his observation haki spike like crazy. Something was coming, the smell of a predator rushing towards its prey. We have company. Newgate, who was at the main deck, had already readied his weapon. Back up, brat. I'll handle this one. His heavy glaive thudded onto the ground as if he was readying himself. Get ready to dive the ship. At that, he had jumped. The entire ship sank a few meters from Whitebeard's hop as he arched into the sky. Thud. The large stature of the pirate whistled through the air and landed on solid ground with a boom. Dot. That wild dog, no care for backup or his surroundings, Whitebeard muttered at the sight of the black shadow rushing at him. It was a man in a simple white shirt and blue pants, galloping through the mangroves. He was clean-shaven with short black hair. A wide grin plastered to his face as the man raised his right hand. FWWM, a pristine black coat of pure haki was wrapped around, erupting with great power. Whitebeard raised his glaive as its blade edge too was coated in haki. Wahahaha. Looks like the party's over here. The carefree man broke out into a boisterous laugh as he drove his fist in a primal motion toward the towering Whitebeard. Newgate just scoffed in irritation and shot his weapon at the coming fist, not withholding even an ounce of strength. And thus the two collided. Boom! Damien, who was watching from nearly 100 meters away, couldn't help but rebalance himself as the ship began to move chaotically from the shockwaves. The ground under the collision crumbled and was eradicated as the cracks and rumbles spread throughout the grove and began to shake Sabayati as a whole. The air blew like tornadoes in all directions, wrecking nearby buildings and even tree life as the two continued their clash. The bright archipelago was dulled out, seemingly turning grey. Worora! What monstrous power! Damien could only concur as he could only watch. They aren't even at their peak and a casual hello can do this. Boom! Another secondary explosion resounded as the two men separated from their clash. Newgate and his adversary stood opposite to each other, nearly 20 meters in between. Gururera! Garp, you wild dog! The man in the simple clothes continued his smile as he cracked his knuckles. Even with all that power from Whitebeard, not a single cut remained on his hand. Garp image, in discord. Newgate, I can go all day. But his fantasies came to an end quite fast. Garp! You bastard, I'm in charge here and I'm ordering you to stand down, a roar exploded through the grove. The cry of anger came from nearly half a kilometer away as another large marine made his way over. Garp picked his nose as if ignoring the yell. Ha, Newgate, you heard anything there? I think my ears are a little blocked today. I know you heard me, Garp. Stand down. The figure of the Admiral landed on the wrecked land. The priority is the Celestial Dragon, you know that. Garp harumphed in disdain. Ha, I say you feed them to the Sea Kings, at least that way they'd have some use. Sengoku grew livid, steam almost sizzled off his angered face. The two began to argue back and forth as Whitebeard was left as a third wheel. He saw the mess and returned to the ship. I guess one of the dragons made it out, let's leave before another admiral shows up. Shuki concurred as the diving procedure began and the coating expanded. Oi, Sengoku, you really want to let them go? I thought the higher UPS wanted those two brats on the ship there. Sengoku, who had calmed down, also grew solemn. In the case the saint was taken by them, it's best to save them stealthy rather than sinking their ship. I'll ask for CP0 to take the lead. Garp just shrugged, whatever, just give me my monthly rice crackers and we'll call it a day. The Vice Admiral then walked away, probably to some spa nearby. Sengoku was left sighing again and again, I hope it all works out, it's been over a decade since a celestial dragon was killed, let alone 3, I just hope it doesn't become 4. He then reached in for his snail and ordered. All troops. Work in full force to find news on that last saint, no one goes off work until he is found. On the ship. Shukine, I take it our shipbuilder is somewhere in the New World, is that our next destination? The woman, who was puffing a cigarette, nodded. He's someone who'll put together the ship the captain wants, since we now have the wood and metal ready, we just need to get it to him. Damien slowly nodded. Whitebeard then chimed in, show me the ore rocks was so fond of. Damien nodded and swiped the red pouch in his hand. Thwonk. A large piece of ore soon fell on the deck with a thud. Whitebeard pulled out a piece of the crimson ore and examined it. Nothing I've seen before, hopefully, it's worth the effort. Shuki nodded from the side as she puffed out another cloud of smoke, well, we completed our mission regardless. She then changed the subject, I wonder where that celestial dragon is that they're so concerned about. Damien, who had begun to dine on some snacks, raised his hand, oh that, I fed him to the Sea Kings. After all, it's our responsibility to keep the cycle of life running. Gururara. Worororo. Yufufufo. Rahahaha. 4 types of odd laughs bellowed within the confines of the bubble as they heard the answer that could lead to the destruction of entire kingdoms and civilizations. Marie Joyce. Pangaea Castle. Marie Joyce was located on the Red Line on the opposite side of the world from Reverse Mountain and served as the official route for people to cross between the 2 halves of the Grand Line. The other path was under the Red Line by coding a ship. Image of Marie Joyce, in Discord. The capital of the world government's interest was here, 10,000 meters in the sky. It was here that the very top members of the government, alongside the celestial dragons, reside. Even beyond the city is the Pangaea Castle, which was allegedly home to the supreme authority of the world government, the 5 elders. Marie Joyce was protected by the Commander-in-Chief, Chief of Cypher Pole and Cypher Pole Aegis Zero and the mysterious God's Knights. Pangaea Castle, Room of Authority. Brilliant light entered through the wide-open windows, gracing the chamber with incredibly clean air. Gold-plated walls, white furniture, and grand architecture, an air of authority concentrated amongst the 5 who sat at the majestic room's center. 5 elders' images, in Discord. The elder with the sword, Saint Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro, sat on the sofa and placed a single bounty poster on the table. Einar D. Damien, are we surprised the chaos was caused by AD, he sarcastically said. The blonde elder, Saint Shepherd Jew Peter, the youngest-looking one, also gave his thoughts. Not only that, this Damien has now joined under that rock's flag. Alongside another troublesome young pirate named Kaido. This is no longer about the unruly pirates, it's about the constant challenges to the world government's authority. It has been questioned again and again, the scarred elder, Saint J. Garcia Saturn, chimed in. The long-bearded elder, Saint Marcus Mars, also spoke. It's best to keep a tight lid on the news, we cannot allow things to get out of hand. Keeping them in the chaotic new world is best, let them kill each other. And this sin incarnate? His father was a problem, and it seems the apple didn't fall far from the tree. The death of 3 celestial dragons is on his hands. The last elder, Saint Topman Morcury, clenched his fist. It is best to nip them in the bud before they can truly sprout and blossom, he said in a tired tone. However, the overlords of the seas and the other bad names are draining our forces. Focusing on the future threats while allowing the present one to thrive is not without mistake. Shing. The Venus Juro unsheathed his blade just enough for his reflection to shine at the razor-sharp metal. Let Cypher Pole surveil them at Fishman Island, have the Navy ready to catch them when they resurface to the New World. Outside of that, we need to curb the ambition of that Zebek, he's far too dangerous to be left alive. The same day, the ship was a little overcrowded. Damien was given a small room, just large enough for him to lie down in. Unfortunately, Kaido and Whitebeard did not have this luxury. The dive to Fishman Island would take a couple of hours. Damien had just walked into his room to take a nap but suddenly felt a familiar tingle. Purr up. His shadow seemed to grow fluid as a figure jumped out, an instance of déjà vu. Damien's hand was instantly locked on the arm of the attacker and began to flail in the air. Even if I can't sense you when hidden, you're just too slow. Damien used this moment to examine the one attempting to take his life while she struggled in his grip. The body was covered in a black shawl, a dark hood covering the face. Now, go to sleep. Bam. Trouble. Shucky's voice echoed in the hallway as Damien looked by the door that was ajar. A stowaway. Shucky eyed the knocked-out assassin and hummed, looks like one of the bounty hunters who terrorizes cocky pirates, the terror of Sabayati. Praise on either the fools who want to haphazardly waltz into the new world or those running from it, suspected of having a rather special Logia fruit. The ether fruit. Damien scratched his chin in intrigue while pulling up the fruit's details in his mind. Ether fruit, sei no me. Logia fruit. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Allows the user to create, control, and transform into ether at will, turning them into an ethereal human. Expanded, ether is the element that fills the universe beyond terrestrial space. It has void-like properties alongside the ability to travel in places absent of light. Shucky blew out a puff of smoke and continued, she has ties with Blackfish Barrow, an underworld emperor, but knowing Barrow it's nothing good. Naturally, Shucky was well versed in what happens in the world hidden away, where the rats make sneaky deals, the underworld. Shucky clicked her tongue, didn't think she'd be so young, how pitiful to be scrounging for big names. Damien shrugged, unaware of Haki, just a cocky Logia user. Shucky hummed in agreement, then asked, gonna kill her? Damien gazed at the unconscious assassin in his room, she tried to kill me twice now so it's not unfounded. But it would be a waste of a good fruit. Fleet Admiral's office, Marine Ford. Are you sure it's confirmed? Kong's tired voice questioned the snail before him. Yes, Fleet Admiral, CP1 found someone who confirmed that the missing saint was dumped into the sea by the sin incarnate. The phone then hung up, leaving the top Marine sitting, lost. Those dastardly D only bring storms of trouble every time they appear. 3 hours later. This broken ship would have gotten us here faster if it was in decent condition, Shucky complained. The shockwaves from that man-ape Garp and Newgate Kun left it barely mobile. Newgate, who was drinking while leaning on the side, could only sigh. Garp may be a wild dog but he's strong. Kaido also appeared while crashing his Kanabo club into the ground, Worora. I can't wait to be strong enough to fight him. The others just rolled their eyes at his words, it wasn't the first time he uttered it and it won't be the last. Soon all the eyes were diverted to the side of the ship. Roar! A school of sea kings soon appeared as they surrounded the ship, their mouths salivating. It was almost pitch black from the depth of their dive and the monsters were barely visible. Shucky looked up and clapped her hands, dinner is here. Another hour later. The darkness of the sea was soon brightly lit, almost as if the sun had risen undersea. So this is Fishman Island, truly a wondrous sight, Damien muttered as he saw it. The island itself is a home for fishmen and merfolk, it serves as an underwater gateway to the new world for those who do not wish to enter through the calm belt. The island resides in a giant double-layered bubble floating above the seafloor, seemingly filled with about half water and reef and half air. Ryagu Palace rested in a smaller bubble on top of the main island's bubble. It was illuminated by the sunlight tree eve that grew down from the red line for a whole 10 kilometers. The band of pirates was still a ways away from the island but it being the only source of light for endless darkness made it quite conspicuous. Damien walked back to his room to see something. And indeed it was true, he had sensed a change in breathing from the assassin, she was awake. Rise and shine, I know you're conscious, his voice resounded in the room as the cloaked figure trembled. Ugh, a groan escaped from under the black cloak as she failed to even get up. Those are sea stone shackles, credit to our cook who has quite the stash of goodies. Damien then sat on the tiny sofa and peered at his attacker. The figure had given up on struggling through the hold and eventually climbed out from the cloak, exposing who was hidden below. Damien's eyebrow was raised as he examined the so-called terror of Sabayati. She had a dark purple dress that went down to her thighs. Purple arm sleeves that left her shoulders exposed alongside a color-matching hood that covered much of her violet hair, leaving the bangs to hide her forehead. Image of the assassin, in Discord. She was around Shucky's height. You're much younger than I thought, Damien said. The girl looked a few years older than himself. She didn't reply, just glared at Damien with indignation. Don't look at me like that, he shrugged. I only broke your sternum, maybe punctured a lung or two. He then saw her relatively healed appearance, if anything, I guess a Logia user can heal such injuries quite easily. Well, anyways. Damien's eyes then grew serious as a powerful burst of oppression fell upon the girl. Her vexed face soon warped into fear and pain as the waves of pressure fell upon her body, causing her to shrink into the bed. I have a few questions for you. The overwhelming haki imposed on her slowly receded as the panting girl tried to regain her composure. The girl tried her best to hide her heavy breathing as she spat out, just kill me. Damien slightly leaned forward with a smile, you sure? Seems like you have some mission to accomplish that perhaps requires the money on my head. Are you sure you can die now? His words invoked a tremble in her body as her face failed to hide the worry. You tried to kill me, he addressed. So me sparing you is equal to you owing me a great debt. Her purple eyes shot up with certain confusion, why you'll let me go? Damien slowly nodded, your devil fruit has great uses, killing you means a future enemy might get their hands on this power so I rather have it on my side. You have some deal with an underground emperor, right? She nodded in honesty. Barrow asked me for 3 billion berries for his help for my revenge, your bounty will finish my hunt. Damien scoffed in return, you actually take the word of those rats hiding in the sewers? You want vengeance then you need the necessary strength. The girl seemed to lower her head in a mix of shame at his words, leaving the room to silence. Meanwhile, a few thoughts sprang up in the pirate's mind as he played out a few scenarios in his mind. Eventually, Damien pitched a thought. We'll probably stay here for a few weeks to repair the ship, until then I'll teach you the basics of haki, the same ability I used to hit you even though you are a Logia. Haki, she reiterated absently. If you can grasp even a thin fragment of haki in that time then perhaps my investment can be worthwhile. Damien saw the bright flame in her eyes, perhaps if he hadn't lived his previous life, he may have embarked on a similar path. Recklessly chasing vengeance without any thought for preparation, grabbing at anything light of hope. What do I call you? Damien casually said as he got up to leave the room. The girl followed and slowly gave her answer, Aurora, my name is Aurora. Creak. The door opened as the pirate walked out of the room and the inner sanctum, the bounty hunter following behind with some trepidation. Her eyes widened as she saw the surroundings of the main deck of the ship. The weary vessel was encased with a transparent coating. Though the expected perpetual darkness of being undersea was not there, rather, there were around 1,000 pairs of eyes glaring at the ship with ill intent. Their skin colors ranged from blue, green, peach, purple, red, and so on. Fins and tails were present in some, though every single one of them had gills. Their weapons were ready as they locked onto the intruding ship, numbering in the tens of thousands. Bam! Kaido's giant club slammed onto the floor as a wide grin was smeared across his face. Worora! Look like you little fishies want a fight, bring it on. Shuki raised her beloved pistol, not showing any signs of fear in the face of great threats. The truth was that they were around 10,000 meters below the sea. If the coating were to burst, then things could get messy fast. But a large hand was soon put in Kaido's way as Whitebeard slowly walked ahead. We don't need to fight. He then saw a giant merman rushing through the masses of fishmen, a golden trident in his hand as he warily watched the intruders. He was around 40 feet tall with a red nose, small eyes, and long thick orange curly hair. His puffy orange beard covered the majority of his lower face and his entire mouth. 40 feet equals 12.2 meters. It's you, Newgate. The future emperor also seemed welcoming as he nodded. Neptune, been a while since I've seen you. The ginormous merman then gestured to the others. Stand down, he's a friend Jamon. Shuki whispered to Damien, that's the great knight Neptune, the highest-ranking soldier of Ryago Palace. Newgate-san has some history with him. Damien nodded at the information. After all, Neptune is the future king of Fishman Island. Soon the ship began to enter the island as it passed through each bubble. As the coating was removed, the ship creaked its final cry and fell apart. Cracks and scars covered the vessel as future travels seemed impossible. Damien breathed in the fresh, coastal air as he marveled at the beauty of the island. Can I ask for your help in fixing the ship, Neptune? Whitebeard asked as the party landed on open soil. The merman seemed hesitant. That'll be hard, Jamon, he admitted with a heavy expression. The king is ill and the appearances of humans looking to capture our own have increased a lot. Me letting you in is already the height of our patience. Damien, who stood nearby, had to agree. Based on my readings, Fishman Island has been at war with human traffickers and pirates for decades upon decades. It's no wonder it feels so tense, he thought, feeling the distant glares from all directions. Though the fishmen had stood down at Neptune's command, they remained nearby, ready to fight. Great aggression emanated from them. Whitebeard looked at the wrecked ship. Shuki was going to offer a possible solution, but something else happened. An emaciated fishman soon swam over in a great hurry, attracting the eyes of everyone. It's you, he exclaimed. The fishman was pointing at the red-eyed young pirate with stunned eyes. I couldn't thank you before, you probably didn't see me, but I was one of the ones you freed from Sabayati. Neptune's eyes widened as he asked, the one who killed the celestial dragons? Gulp. The giant merman took a deep breath and then gestured to the fishmen around him. Perhaps we can help with repairing your ship after all, Jamon. How'd this become about me? Damien muttered with some confusion. Shuki elbowed him from the side. Looks like you saved us from some trouble, Damien-chan. The young pirate in question just cleared his throat and firmly said, it was all part of my plan. The words evoked a giggle from the woman as the two waited for the giant merman to finish his words. Neptune regained his bearings and gave an option, let's go talk someplace more fitting, Jamon. Ryago Palace. The current king is sick and cannot meet you, but I will speak on behalf of our people, Jamon, Neptune said as he stood beside the throne. Damien and co had been invited to the palace, a wondrous place with a giant golden dragon hoisted behind it. The huge doors that spanned dozens of meters alongside the coral and undersea flowers created quite the contrast. Rainbow light bathed the palace with breathtaking majesty. Image of the palace, in discord. You should know of our anger to humans, Jamon, the merman said with a sigh. Even though we are under the government, our home is not protected by them, so we have to fight back with everything we have. Newgate sat down on the ground while hearing the words. And yet you agreed to help, Shuki said as she puffed out a cloud of smoke. Neptune nodded, though our people, myself included, hate humans more than ever, many will change their perspective after the news of you killing the world nobles, Jamon. Hoh. The irony leaves me speechless. The Knight of the Sea then calmed down and addressed a question, how long will you stay here? Newgate looked up to the towering fishman and roughly estimated, 3 weeks should be enough for the repairs and new coating. Neptune just nodded, make yourself at home, just be understanding of any stares, Jamon. A little while later. The repairs will begin tomorrow, some young merman by the name of Den will oversee it, Shuki said while getting some belongings from the ship. Your little prisoner is in your room, you're more of a playboy than I thought, you won't attack me in my sleep, right? She teasingly said. Damien rolled his eyes, I don't have time for such things. Shuki then looked at Damien and lightly hummed, don't get too lost in your path to power, it will leave you lonely, she said with an air of helplessness. The woman then hopped off the ship and went to her own devices. Damien fell in some thought but eventually shook his head and went back to his room. Creak. He saw the girl sitting on the ground, lost in thought. Killing saints, she muttered to the person who came in. I didn't think there'd be such crazy people in this world. Damien just gave a small laugh. Rahahaha. Sabayati is probably in a full lockdown, the news of the deaths will surely leave them in shambles. The celestial dragon's troubles were music to the pirate's ears. Damien then changed the subject to something else. You were able to dive into and out of my shadow back then, he began. Tell me more about that. Aurora looked up and hesitated for a second before answering truthfully. I can enter what I call the night realm with my powers, it's a separate world, and it allows me to carry out my bounty hunting with great efficiency. Damien nodded at the words, a perfect power for an assassin. While thinking inside, a separate world, kinda like the Dordor fruit or the mirror world made by the mirror fruit. Take me into it. Click. The sea stone shackles were unlocked, leaving behind a shocked Aurora. You. Damien shrugged, hurry up now. The girl looked up with mixed thoughts but then nodded. Her hand reached out to grab Damien's arm. Purr up. Purple energy soon enveloped him as he felt weightlessness. Soon both were pulled down and into his very shadow, leaving behind an empty room. Damien's senses went haywire as he felt his balance fall and turn upside down and inside out. It only lasted a second till he rose out from his shadow once more, to this time the usual scenery of his room was there, but it was as if he was seeing the world through purple-tinted glasses. The surroundings were coated with violet energy, giving everything a rather unsettling look. I can't sense things beyond this world but I can move around without problem, he muttered. Aurora just watched, still a little unsure of her decision to let Damien in. Her eyes soon cleared up and she spoke up, yes. I can move around here and go back to reality by leaving through the shadows. Damien saw his room, his bed was casting a shadow that felt like a gateway. He then looked at the girl. I wasn't wrong in not killing you, Damien said. How about it, I will give you the tools to fulfill your vengeance and if you succeed, you will work under me. Damien had certain aspirations to control power beyond the scope of a pirate. An area that existed in the grey zone between the Navy and the pirates. He needed fitting personnel to oversee this. The choice to gain power at the cost of working for the man whom she had tried to kill had left Aurora a little befuddled. Recalling the haki and its evident strength cleared up that fog. He has no reason to lie, she thought. Damien saw her ambivalent expression and added a little fire, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. The girl was instantly lost in Damien's profound words, not knowing he had shamelessly stolen it from a wise person from his previous life. A few moments passed and Aurora came to a decision, I'll do it. The following night, Damien decided to give the assassin girl a main goal to give up her sight and focus on her surroundings solely on her devil fruit power, experimenting if her ability to sense the darkness around her could awaken observation haki. He also had a different task of his own. 3 weeks before entering the final sea, my devil fruit mastery is still stuck but perhaps that man can help me. He eventually made his way to an abandoned area of Fishman Island. It was far from the main populace and under some coral hills. Damien studied the terrain and found his target. You wandered all the way here, brat. The young pirate gave a helpless laugh at his senses once again being fooled by the much stronger pirate that was sitting atop the hill with a barrel of alcohol. Damien jumped to the top and stood near the giant man with the white stache. Gurup the man drank the liquid while watching the sunlight tree eve. What do you think the Marines will do? The younger pirate casually asked. Whitebeard paused his drinking and gave a casual answer. Don't expect much truth, they've been extinguishing Rock's actions for a while now, a cover-up is natural. Damien nodded at the words. They don't have resources for anything more down here, the new world is too chaotic. The man then drank a few more liters of the drink. In the middle of his gulping of alcohol, Newgate took another glance at Damien and narrowed his eyes. A year ago Rox sent me to bring Kaido to him, and now you, he said. But you're not like that war-driven fool, why come under Rock's flag? Damien looked at the man more than twice his size and answered, I want strength. Newgate looked away from the youth and went back to drinking. The only thing you'll find at the Hakinosu is the worst scum of mankind. Whitebeard's eyes changed, they grew fiery, the sea can't be tamed by a bunch of fools who lack a moral code. They'll kill themselves before grasping even a hint of power. The cliff began to tremble with slight vibrations at the annoyed pirate. Damien took a breath and asked, why do you stay under rocks then? A silence broke out as the giant man once again glared at the young pirate beside him. His sharp eyes befell the youth with an expressionless face. Gurub. Newgate gave a slight sigh and drank another few mouthfuls of sake. Just repaying a debt, he said. Though his tone shifted to a more yearning one, I'm also searching for something. Damien naturally asked, what's that? A family. Whitebeard glanced at the boy who simply nodded. He raised his eyebrow and couldn't help but ask, you don't find that odd? Damien just smiled with a shrug, who am I to judge? Whitebeard lowered his sake cup subconsciously, Gururera. You're a funny kid. The two then returned to a brief silence as Damien voiced out. I came here for a favor. And what's that? Damien turned his gaze to the future emperor, I've been at a threshold with my devil fruit. He then touched a coral sticking out of the ground. The sound of pixelation resounded as the coral glowed red for a second and then exploded into tiny pieces, too many to count. Whitebeard seemed interested in the power, seeing it for the first time. Oh? It's a dangerous power but fits a bold kid like you. Damien then allowed some of the red mist to sizzle out of his palm as he examined it from close up. I ate the pulverize fruit and became a pulverizing human, he explained. The power is listed as the same destruction class fruits as yours. Whitebeard completed his sentence, and you think that I can help you. He then put his jug of sake by the side and stood up, casting a giant shadow toward the rocky terrain. Suddenly, the man reeled in his right fist, almost driving it into his opposite shoulder. He then swung it forward. Crack! The air soon creaked and shattered like glass as the incredible power shook the very ground the two were on. It was an astonishing sight of a single punch quite literally shattering the fabric of space. Following the attack, a powerful wave of expanding air and concentrated destruction shot out and traveled to a nearby hill. Boom! Rumble! The hill exploded into a rain of debris with dust. The tremor fruit, the power that could destroy the world. Whitebeard then grabbed his drink once again and sat down. You saw it. The difference in how I used my power. Damien thought it over and arrived at an epiphany. I see, he slowly said. You let the full power loose without any attempt to control it, rather than to forcefully direct it. Whitebeard nodded at the words. When it comes to a destructive and volatile force, trying to control it will only limit its power. But it can be hard to fully concentrate your power efficiently, especially when it is so devastating. Damien nodded in agreement, his eyes soon wandering to the large glaive resting on the ground. Is that why you use that weapon? It helps further concentrate your attacks. The large pirate grinned. That's right. Maybe you should look for a suitable weapon too. A weapon? Damien thought. But he then turned his attention elsewhere. He gazed at the red energy emanating from his palm. They were tiny crystalline shapes that slowly rose out in a frenzy manner. Rather than controlling it, it's better to embrace its destructibility. Damien's mind was spitfiring thoughts as Whitebeard just watched in intrigue. Soon Damien's body began to gather the red energy from every pore and directed it to his palm. Rather than locking them down into his hand, he instead began to allow it to flow out. Fwoo! The emergence of such energy summoned screeches from the air that had recently been shattered and were now being crushed apart. Damien waved his glowing hand as a large stream of crimson energy exploded out and began to form a field surrounding him. The crimson dome soon fell upon the land and began to crush and ravage everything within. Hiss! The air violently shrieked as if everything nearby had begun to tremble and shred apart. The field expanded to around 10 meters in all directions. Crimson lines shot out from Damien's body, mimicking magnetic field lines, digging and drilling into everything within its scope. Fruit mastery has reached the intermediate stage. Whitebeard chuckled at the sight of Damien's reveling in his newfound power. He opened his palm and felt the crimson energy drilling into his skin, leaving it numb. Another monstrous brat. Midnight. Damien had left Whitebeard's resting area feeling energized. His new powers allowed him to expand his influence into the nearby area, crushing everything within a certain area. It even reminded Damien of the level of awakening of a paramecia fruit, but naturally, it wasn't it. Sybil, tell me a little on awakening a devil fruit, he asked in his mind. It is the final stage of a fruit power, vastly stronger and more supreme than any fruit applications beforehand. She continued, awakening a devil fruit is not easy, if anything, you can use the star count of a power to realize its difficulty. Damien stopped in his tracks. Awakened paramecia from what I recall in my past life were Doflamingo, Katakuri, Kid, and Law. Damien then listed each fruit based on their masteries, referring to the vast array of knowledge he had obtained 2 years ago and Sybil's insights. String fruit, 5.5 stars. Mochi fruit, 6 stars. Magnet fruit, 6.5 stars. Ope fruit, 7 stars. Doflamingo's power was quite powerful in his hands, but it seemed to reach a certain threshold and simply could never go beyond. It was rather Doflamingo's intelligence and knowledge that made him a grave threat. Based on his fruit rating, it would be fairly easy to awaken in the hands of someone with a high affinity to the power. Katakuri's fruit was sitting at 6 stars, this would make it a step harder to awaken than the string fruit. The same idea was expanded to the magnet fruit. It was at the same level as Damien's fruit power, with the ability to wreak havoc of great proportions. Kid had awakened in his early 20s, an impressive feat. The ope fruit is ranked as a 7-star fruit, no wonder it was so damn broken, the pirate exclaimed. Such a fruit was coined as an ultimate class devil fruit by Sybil. The difficulty in awakening such ultimate fruits can vary, they are the ones that can manipulate the laws of nature and reality. Such a fruit rating should be harder to awaken, yet Law did it by the age of 26. Is it the will of D? Damien asked himself. My fruit power should awaken naturally in 6 or so years, he calculated. Yet God Valley will happen much earlier than that. The young pirate clenched his hand, ambition once again fueling his spirit. It's too slow. I'll need to step up my game. To be continued. Chapter 20, The New World is dark and full of terrors. 3 weeks later. Boom. A grand spectacle broke out as cracks formed in the air while crimson currents surged on the receiving end. A huge shockwave raged on and shattered apart the red barrage of energy as the ground warped in return. First, it was ripped apart, followed by exploding into innumerable pieces. Damn, that hurts. A young voice resounded as a body stepped out from a huge cluster of debris formed by a collapsed hill. The young man had black hair with red streaks running down the left side. Sharp, red pupils gazed at the ginormous pirate casually standing a few tens of meters away. You really don't like pulling your punches, Newgate-san. Gururera, the giant man laughed. What's the problem, kid? Your body recovers pretty fast. Even though he said it rather offhandedly, Whitebeard was quite surprised. He had been humoring Damien's crazed thirst for fast growth by giving him a daily dose of bone-rattling earthquakes. If only he knew that Damien was trying to further increase his anatomy and devil fruit mastery by taking the brunt of a natural disaster. Dusting off his shoulders, the bold pirate shot forth without much care from the damage from before. Vush! The air whistled as Damien appeared right before the towering Whitebeard. Ha, let's see you stand up from this one, kid. Purr up. A glowing white orb bubbled around the infamous pirate's left fist. Damien did not waver, wrapping his haki-clad fist that began to boil with volatile crimson energy. The attacks collided. Boom. Ugh. Damien gritted his teeth as he felt his entire left arm go numb as if thousands of needles were drilling into his very bones. The energy from his hand sprinted forth endless currents of pulverizing energy as they swamped towards the overpowering Whitebeard. Newgate grinned slightly as his fist slowly began to shift ahead, pushing back Damien's blazing attack. Boom. Another explosion followed as the young pirate was shot into another faraway hill, effectively drilling right in. A dull silence arrived as the restless air began to calm down in the wake of the recent clash. Newgate looked down at his fist and squinted his eyes in interest. You're copying haki emission with your powers, he smirked. It stings, kid. Rumble. Soon the huge pile of destroyed earth trembled as a body slowly stood up, clawing its way out. Damien's arm was bleeding, his forearm broken, a bone visibly protruding out. Crunch. The young man pushed the bone back into place, eliciting a dull groan. Yet the pained expression was washed away, replaced with a wry smile. You're not even using any haki, my power is really nothing worth mentioning. Gururera. Don't sell yourself short, Whitebeard said, walking toward Damien. You did well to trim my nails. Damien rolled his eyes. The two pirates had become more natural in their interactions with each other. Damien appreciated the future emperor's help in training while Whitebeard was impressed by the rookie pirate's perseverance. Damien's routine was, wake up, eat, guide Aurora for a few hours while practicing observation haki, eat, train his fruit and armament haki with Whitebeard, eat, train in combat with some senior fishmen who had welcomed him after freeing their people, eat, sleep, and repeat. A schedule that would leave most with broken spirits and shivered timbers, yet to Damien, it was just another day. Yet even now I stand little to no chance against the real monsters of this world. That is the thought that drove him to continuously claw at every opportunity to get stronger, subconsciously warding away all other shackles. A while later, Damien had collected himself and left for an area northeast of Fishman Island. Just yesterday some mermaids had come to give him an invitation from Neptune to come there. Sybil, bring up my stats, he said while making his way to the location. Coming right up. Einar D. Damien. Age, 16 years, 4 months, 11 days. Height, 10 feet 4 inches, 3.15 m. Status, tired, injured. Strength, middle tier Yonko Commander upward arrow. Devil fruit, pulverize fruit, intermediate mastery, upward arrow. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Sea stone resistance, 69.7% upward arrow. Skills, lightning recovery, mighty vitality, evol-able anatomy, voice of all living things, will of D, Rokushiki. Haki, observation haki, intermediate mastery, armament haki, intermediate mastery, upward arrow, conqueror's haki, initial mastery, upward arrow. Even after all that beating my anatomy isn't ready to evolve, Damien said out loud with some uncertainty. It seemed the gap between strength would only grow, that simply meant he needed to try harder and get beat up some more. He then turned to another string of text. Conqueror's haki. Something one could not train, rather it would grow with one's own mental status and overall strength. Sybil, based on my memories, who would be a rival in strength? Damien asked. The reply came fast, at your current strength, you could go equally against the likes of Smoothie or Yozu. But there was one thing Damien was able to gauge after the 3-week time skip. Show me Whitebeard's current profile. Edward Newgate. Age, 32 years, 2 months, 19 days. Height, 21 feet 10 inches, 6.66 m. Status, thriving. Devil fruit, tremor fruit. Fruit rating, 7 stars, ultimate class fruit. Haki, observation haki, armament haki, advanced mastery, conqueror's haki. Strength, within Yonko stage. Without a doubt, the readings were missing in detail. Such imprecise results were credited to Damien's weak observation haki and strength. Garp's exchange with Whitebeard was the only reason I could gauge the armament haki. I still need a lot of training, Damien sighed as he reached his destination. He saw a ginormous merman not too far, simply gazing into the distance. You called me to the sea forest, Neptune, Damien said as he landed by the knight's side. The fishman hummed towards the young pirate, the mermaids have shown you around the island, all but this place. He then turned his eyes to the wasteland surrounded by giant trees. An enormous ship sat on the far horizon, Noah. This is the sea forest, the final area you have yet to see. Perhaps it was Neptune showing his goodwill to Damien, or maybe it was something else, but naturally, Damien wouldn't mind since Fishman Island was a special place. Come with me, Jaimon. The two went through the rather well-lit area that was littered with destroyed ships and debris, a result of being at the bottom of the sea floor. Damien squinted his eyes as he felt a foreign voice from afar. Someone, was calling to him. He made his way over to the cove, within a depression surrounded by a ring of rocks. At the very center stood a large, blue cube-shaped stone, carved with ancient words and symbols. Poneglyphs, Neptune came as well as he said, it's the ancient script that has sat here for centuries now, Jaimon. Image of the poneglyph, in Discord. Damien nodded, not exactly surprised by the stele. His eyes soon drifted to the side where an equally large stone sat. The only difference was that it was deep red in color. That is. Damien unconsciously gulped as he saw the poneglyph. One of the road poneglyphs. The combined locations detailed by all 4 road poneglyphs allow one to locate Laugh Tale, therefore, becoming the king of the pirates. Damien recalled that this stele was eventually lost a few years after Roger read its contents, quite a suspicious outcome. Image of the road poneglyph, in Discord. Damien sighed, he could not read the stone, not yet anyway. He then fixed his eyes back on the blue stone. It was the stone that called out to him. The one that pulled him here. An apology. Joyboy, Damien muttered as the whispers echoed in his ears. Why, you can read it. Neptune yelped from the side. Damien slowly shook his head. This poneglyph was written by someone consciously, not simply to detail knowledge or lost history, but carved with quite a lot of emotion, Damien explained. Forgive me. A distant yet tired voice that left the young pirate solemn. I can hear the ancient voice, in whispers, but it's there. Neptune was breathing heavily. While the giant merman was lost in thought, Damien reached out to the stone. There was something else there, he could feel it. Phew! An orb of white energy soon shot out from the core of the poneglyph towards Damien. The young pirate grabbed the ball of energy and analyzed it. It was some sort of glowing orb. Upon inspection, the ball was an odd thing, it was neither cold nor hot. It had no weight. It almost felt like it did not even exist. A description soon surfaced in his mind, bringing clarity. Equals dash equals dash, dash 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 equals dash equals. Memory shard, 1 of 3. Collect all 3 shards to unlock the message left behind by the original system user. Equals dash dash, dash 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 equals. Hi. A voice soon erupted in Damien's mind, it was Sybil. Damien, this seems to be a piece of the key to my locked data. Damien thought over the information he had just gotten. Soon the white energy was absorbed into the red-eyed youth's hand and disappeared like such. Such a scene left him thinking. I guess I'll find them eventually. I wonder if the original user had ties with Joyboy in some way, Damien thought. Meanwhile, Neptune woke up from his daze and did not comment on the memory shard, as if it was invisible. Damien-kun, I guess this wraps up the tour, Jaimon, he muttered, still shaken about the steel's words. Neptune then reached into his pocket and took out a sheet of paper. It looked comically tiny in his hands, but it was only slightly too small in Damien's. This came in recently, it's dated 15 days ago, but news takes time to reach down here, Jaimon. Damien eyed the newspaper and scoffed. A band of pirates headed by the Sin Incarnate besieged the world nobles at Sabayati Archipelago. All pirates besides Einar D. Damien were apprehended. Neptune nodded at Damien's annoyance. The government is very keen on keeping things as much in control as they can, Jaimon. Damien nodded with a slight sigh. No news on the 4 dead dragons. They even erased all mention of Newgate-san or any words on the Rocks pirates. Though his eyes fell upon a string of words, the World News Agency. Neptune scratched his glorious orange beard and chimed in a few thoughts of his own. It is the news agency under full control of the world government, it's one of their greatest tools, Jaimon. No wonder the government had no trouble erasing the Rocks pirates from history, Damien surmised. A disdainful smile soon appeared on Damien's face. The government wants to bastardize history? I can't let that happen. Rather it's best to take it into my hands. Damien pondered for a second. He inputted the parameters and said, Sybil, ready the task, codename Nexus with a due date of 1486, he ordered. Got it. Following that, he inputted a few parameters. Operation Nexus. Find World News Agency main base. Find replacement president. Bring the replacement under control. Have the agency exit the world government's grasp. Time limit, 1486. A wise man once said, whoever controls the media, controls the mind. Damien didn't exactly care much about what the commoners of the world thought of him, rather it was a tool that would greatly serve his purpose in controlling, or at least, somewhat slowing the government down. In the current era, the world government could do just about anything and get away with it. Much like how later on Morgans was able to drive the world in certain wavelengths by his reports. Damien wanted such power too. Naturally, allowing the soon-to-come God Valley incident to drain away in forgetfulness was rather unsightly as well. Beyond that, a fitting president could also do great in sending information. Plop! A small sheet of paper then fell out from the newspaper and onto the sea floor, interrupting Damien's train of thought. He looked below and gave a small smile. Naturally, it was a bounty. Wanted Einar, D, Damien. Sin incarnate. 300 million. Dead or alive. The number doubled, most likely the pissed off nobles trying to hunt me down for my sins. Nearby. So, you're leaving now, the distant yet soft voice resounded from the cave. It was a large clearing made within one of the large coral hills in the outer parts of Fishman Island. The area where Damien and Aurora were training. He answered. Your devil fruit goes a little too well with observation hacky, it's quite impressive. Damien was talking while glancing at a screen within his mind. Equals dash equals dash, dash 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 equals. Amethyst Aurora. Age, 17 years, 1 months, 26 days. Height, 7 feet 4 inches. Status, healthy. Devil fruit, ether fruit, intermediate mastery. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Hacky, observation hacky, initial mastery. Strength, Yonko crew pirate. Equals dash 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 equals. To think the stowaway I picked up was a princess, Damien teased. Now I feel like a main character now. It was a tale Aurora shared with him. A story about a girl who was forced out of her own kingdom, her family killed and betrayed by their very own minister. Aurora looked at the tall pirate who had vastly broadened her horizons over the past 3 weeks. I won't forget our deal, she said with a resolute tone. This is an assurance. Damien examined the purple-haired bounty hunter. He then looked down to see her open palm holding a thin piece of plain paper. Yet every moment, the paper would inch toward the girl like a magnet. Your Vivre card, Damien smirked. It's akin to putting a tracker on yourself for anyone to hunt you down. Yet his words failed to invoke anything more than a determined gaze from the girl. Pocketing the paper, he nodded. Good luck. Try not to die, otherwise, it'll cause some troubles for my plans. Damien left the cave, waving backwards to the girl. Aurora looked at the slowly shrinking figure, her gaze inexplicable. Did she sell her soul to the devil for her revenge? She balled her fists, throwing away loose thoughts. Her time with Damien taught her some patience. To bide her time and train in the powers of Haki. For the first time in her life, the path ahead was no longer covered in darkness, rays of hope lightened the way. Such hope could either make or break a desperate person. By the edge of Fishman Island. Damn it! Boom! A huge explosion echoed through the coral grounds as a black club hammered down. Blasts of powerful thuds rippled through the terrain as a giant pirate rained down attacks on a smaller one. Damien, you bastard! Why is your bounty higher than mine all of a sudden? Kaido was throwing a fit of rage as he began to pummel the recently arrived Damien. The latter was dodging all attacks with his smaller and quicker stature. What's wrong, Kaido? You can't even land a single hit, no wonder there's an 80 million gap between our bounties. Damien fashioned a grin as he shaved through the air, further enraging the beast. Reime Haka! Fury Road! The purple lightning and crimson energy exploded all over the nearby land as waves of shock spread forth. Cracks formed all over the soil beneath as dust and debris soon remained. Bang, bang! 2 pitch-black bullets fired at the clashing pirates as the air whizzed in their wake. Damien and Kaido's eyes shone in observation as the two instantly recoiled by instinct. That's enough, the ship was finally fixed and you're already trying to break it apart. The annoyed voice came from the unassuming woman with the pistol in her hands. It was naturally Shuki. TCH. Kaido couldn't unload his irritation anywhere so he simply went to the ship and fell asleep. Another towering pirate soon arrived on the scene. If you want to fight, I'm sure you'll get that chance soon, Whitebeard casually said. Damien narrowed his eyes. The new world, the unconquered sea with endless monsters awaiting, I'm finally there. Shucky nodded at her companions and began the ascending protocol to sail up to the new world. A few hours later, traversing through the dark sea took a while. Though the ship was repaired to sail, its structural integrity was long lost, and its expiry date was coming soon. Damien soon saw the ocean end as the ship emerged from the depths. Rumble. The storm alongside the constant thunder was awfully conspicuous. The rain poured incessantly, while it was snowing in the far east, and hailing further south. Tempestuous currents carried the ship while the sails creaked in response. The weather was not the main attraction. Purr up. Whitebeard's right hand soon pulsed with a blue orb as the air inside was long ravaged. Click. Shucky's pistol cocked in a bullet and she let out a cloud of smoke. Thunk. Kaido slammed his mace on the deck of the ship with a wide grin. Szzz. Crimson energy sizzled out from Damien's hand, ready to fight. A loud voice resounded from the chaotic seas, "You bastards are finally out, I was running out of rice crackers waiting for you." Another voice soon followed. "Garp, this is not the time for your nonsense, these pirates must die here before they can reach Hakinosu." The conversation took place at the core of the welcoming party. 10 large marine warships, bred for battle. Damien's sharp eyes zoomed in on the two figures standing on side-by-side ships. Their mighty frames cast a wide net of relief to the thousands of marines, leaving them in high spirits. It was a force beyond even a buster call. 10 warships headed by 10 vice-admirals. Shucky blew out some more smoke as she casually said. All under the command of Vice-Admiral Garp and Admiral Becerra. Damien smirked in response, his crimson eyes reflecting the upcoming battle. "Quite the welcome to this hellish sea." Wahahaha. Becerra-san, it's your time to shine. Garp was as lax as ever. He stood on his dog-headed ship while looking towards the bare-headed one. The man he spoke to, however, was not amused. He stood around 10 feet tall, 3 meters, with short black hair. The Marine wore brown navy attire with a white coat draped over his shoulders, a powerful air surrounding him. He was perhaps in his late 30s. The scowl on his face was rather unsettling as he turned his gaze to the surrounded pirate ship. Thunk. 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 Heavy footsteps echoed through the thick wooden deck of the marine warship. The nearby marines revered the admiral as he slowly raised his hands as if accepting a prayer. Pit of despair. A silent yet foreboding moment passed. Rumble. The entire sea began to quiver, growing from a subtle trembling to a distinct rumbling which was growing in intensity. Even the pirates nearly half a kilometer away felt the shaking as huge volumes of water began to displace. Splash! Towering bursts of seawater shot into the sky, eclipsing the navy warships and unveiling something far more terrifying. Ginormous walls of pure earth, brown in color, rose out from the ground in a uniform, circular shape. They were 10 meters thick as they extended further and further into the sky. Rumble! The shaking continued for a few seconds, far outshadowing the disastrous weather. Soon enough, the walls reached their maximum height of 830 meters and entirely encased the battlefield in a circular ring made of thick earth. 830 m equals half a mile equals Burj Khalifa. The site of the encircling walls nearly 5 kilometers, 3.1 miles, from the center alone cast a shadow that would put the fear of death into the souls of most, simultaneously raising marine morale. Shucky sighed at the sight. The mountain fruit, a paramecia-type devil fruit with the ability to erect mountains wherever the user pleases. Image of Becerra the mountain, in Discord. Damien took a deep breath as he witnessed the power. He can even pull earth from below the ocean. The woman nodded. Becerra's control over anything mountainous is deeper than the water here, so he can do as he pleases. The young pirate narrowed his eyes, glancing at the barriers. Even though the admirals outside of Sengoku were forgotten and never mentioned, it would make sense for them to be monsters to be the powerhouses of the rocks era. Meanwhile, Whitebeard focused elsewhere. Becerra playing with his rocks as always, but this weather is also a little too depressing, he muttered. The man's eyes were locked onto the hellacious climate that had graced them: snow, sleet, rain, snow, lightning, and howling winds. Suddenly Newgate coiled his hand to the side, the familiar earthquake bubble pulsing like a heart. A single swing onto the area above. Boom! The atmosphere around the fist was spreading with fern-like cracks, resembling glass. They continued their advent, stretching and branching off to the point where nearly 100 meters of the sky was left cracked. Shatter! In a cacophony of crashes, the very air exploded into giant transparent shards, unleashing a powerful blast of white shockwave energy that reached the clouds. Gulp! The marines who were high on the admiral hype were brought back to reality as they saw the astonishing act. Voo! The entire storm and thunderous welcome were utterly and completely shattered. Bright and warm rays of sunlight soon bathed the entire canyon, gracing its prisoners with better weather compared to the outer seas. Such a sight was as incredible as the walls being erected, yet Basara remained motionless. Garp, not so much. Wahaha. Get ready, you guys, he roared to the other vice-admirals. Though they were of the same rank, it seemed as if they either respected Garp enough or were simply numb to his insolent behavior. Huya Whitebeard twirled his weapon, feeling the tense air spread across the pit. The ship is already on its last life, keep the battle away from it, he warned. Thud. The wooden deck shook as the 20-plus-foot tall pirate lunged forward with a single jump. His body arched through the sky as he crossed the sea. Purr up. Whilst in the air, Newgate wrapped his weapon in the white bubble that pulsated in impatience. Ha! The pirate grunted as he swiped the weapon across the sky, directing it onto the marine formation. A silver tear cut through the atmosphere, giving birth to a shockwave that raged out to the 5 warships in its way. Phew! The air screeched from the incoming hell, giving way for the attack to meet its target. Boom! The entire marine formation shook, though the 3 warships at the front bore the brunt of the damage. Thick chasms opened up through the ship that was the size of ancient giants, forcing the marines on board into a grave panic. The seas underneath grew chaotic and rampaging, summoning giant tidal waves that enveloped the warships. AHH! Hang on! Yug! Basara stood tall under the raging winds, annoyed by the turn of events. Don't act so pathetically, he told the soldiers screaming at the 5 sinking warships. He then raised his right hand. Rumble! The seas shook once more as huge, blunt spikes of earth shot from the seafloor and pushed the collapsing ships up and out from the water, saving them from sinking. 3 crumbling ships were easily salvaged without significant casualties. Yet the true threat, Whitebeard, was still mobile. Garp, hold him down. The order went out as a silver figure dashed through the sky and rocketed on ahead like a comet. Boom! A huge explosion rang through the sky, originating from a haki-clad fist meeting a giant glaive. Let's go too, Kaido. 2 bursts of air boomed as the young duo of pirates dove onto opposite sides. While Whitebeard went down the middle, holding down 3 marine warships and the 2 unique battleships himself, the other available ships began to move in. Pop! Damien moonwalked through the air as he found himself landing on a warship. Thud! The Sin Incarnate's black boots made contact with the enemy ships, all the while alerting the near 1,000 marines on board. A grin etched on his face. Take down the pirate! For justice! Fire! Damien eyed the masses. A sharp red glint passed through his eyes. The rambunctious marines soon paused as dark red waves of pulsating energy emanated from the young pirate. The overwhelming weight and despair overtook many of the marines as their eyes darkened and rolled back into their sockets. Thud! Thunk! Twug! Tens, hundreds, and thousands of bodies soon fell to the ground, taking victims from not only the immediate ship but all 3 other nearby ones. That was Conqueror's haki. The marines on Damien's side of the battlefield, though thinned out, still had a few thousand standing. Whiz! 2 shadows shot forth towards Damien. We must take him down before he reaches the pirate island. Damien saw the coming shadows and raised a hand that released some ominous red particles. Utter ruin! The crimson energy bubbled into a crimson circle as it exploded forth. A huge current, nearly 10 meters in diameter, shredded apart everything in its wake, drilling through a huge chunk of area. AHH-. The incoming rear admiral duo was encompassed wholly in the energy. They couldn't even finish their wails before all that remained was a cloud of blood. Splatter! The crimson liquid dyed the wooden floor with a fresh paint of red, eerily reflecting the imminent fate of the others. Damien wasted no time and tapped on the ship. Shatter! The crimson energy spread out and began to encase the entire ship. Reaching a good 10 meters every passing second, slowly but surely endangering the hundreds of marines on board. A nearby vice-admiral felt an ominous feeling. Abandoned ship. Creak. Boom. A few lucky marines near the edge were able to jump out, however, the others were not as lucky. The deck under them crumbled to dust as they fell from the height into the bottom of the ship. Damien was about to jump to another ship and yet a shadow appeared behind him. Iron body, slam. The opponent's arm thickened as he slammed his fist onto the unsuspecting Damien. Yet the result wasn't what he expected. Clang! Damien's blackened fist clashed with the enemy marine's fist, sending out a burst of shock. The Navy officer saw the smirk on his opponent, hearing a few passing words, "Don't you know iron body locks you in place?" Within a split second, Damien's finger wrapped with a current of air drilled into the man's shoulder, exploding his rotator cuff. Ugh! A loud groan rang as the marine yelped in pain. His right arm was no longer functioning from the torn shoulder, sending out copious amounts of blood. The officer forgot his pain as saw the enemy pirate jump onto another warship. Whiz! He soon reappeared onto another warship utilizing shave of the Rokushiki, grasping his right shoulder. Vice Admiral Hux. The marines saluted. Be ready, that pirate is aiming at our ships. Hux warned, tying a cloth over his deltoid. An ominous silence arrived as a dark figure appeared in front of the marine, utilizing a familiar technique. How did a pirate get a hold of the Rokushiki? Hux questioned in surprise as realized Damien had used 3 of the 6 styles already. Click. Cock. Clank. Not only dozens of rifles and pistols but also cannons locked on the invader. Damien gave a small grin as he began to release his power. Hux saw the pirate's smirk as his haki began to flare, no dash. Desolation Zone. A powerful and crushing power soon exploded from the young pirate like a volcano. It stemmed from his heart that had gathered a large clump of pulverizing energy. It spread out in mere moments, encapsulating everything nearby in a complete circle, stretching out over the majority of the warship. Vo! The air within the zone began to bubble and churn as the crushing energy rained down like red raindrops, leaving hell behind for anyone in its way. The men, the weapons, and the deck began to crumple and shred from being compressed and crippled. Damien walked on under the carnage, the circular zone moved alongside him. The soldiers closer to the center, in other words, closer to Damien, had long become nothing more than droplets of blood and bits of bone. The bright sunny sky was completely dulled away, replaced with a crimson cloud. The grinding energy soon dissipated, leaving a sole Damien at the very center of the ship. Going from a mix of yellings, groans, and grunts to complete silence was truly deafening. Creak. The sails were long gone, just some simple framework remained as it touched the seawater that dispersed his attack. Whiz! Damien's eyes widened as he felt the movement of air behind him, it was the bloodied-up Hux. Bang! A dull boom went off from hundreds of meters away, echoing past the turbulent seas. Ugh! Damien saw the Vice-Admiral's eyes lose their luster, and a small hole appeared through his head. The marine fell into a pool of blood with a loud thud. Damien's eyes drifted to the far side and locked onto the figure of a woman with a pistol, blowing the smoke. Feeling his gaze, the woman gave a wink in return. However, it seemed something had clicked in her mind as she proceeded to mouth out an order, clear the path for the ship to sail to the walls. That said, Shucky returned to unloading endless mags of bullets at distant marines. Bang bang bang! One hand holding the cigar, one hand pulling the trigger. Damien no longer waited and jumped into the sky with his moonwalk and raised a hand. Utter ruin! The stream of ravaging red energy once again blazed out and enveloped the ship and its backside where the rudder was located. Not only was the back half left in dust but the entire navigation of the warship was gone, leaving it impossible to be salvaged. Damn pirates! The voice was that of the Admiral himself. Becerra stood at the bow of his ship as he saw the mission begin to fall apart. Garp was busy holding down the powerful new gate aboard a wrecked warship, sending seismic torrents from the core of their clash. This forced 7 vice-admirals to jump from ship to ship, clearing up the tsunamis and shockwaves to protect their troops. It seemed that a naval battle against a man of quakes was not the best idea. Whitebeard also saw the battle turn in his favor, yet something was afoot, credit to his alarmed haki. Boom! The air suddenly exploded as a giant tentacle-like structure made of pure earth shot out from the seafloor toward Whitebeard. The attack began to morph into a hand that spanned a good 200 meters in width, 656 feet. In a simple and crude motion, the limb balled up into a fist, crushing Whitebeard in its palm. FWWM. A pristine black color soon wrapped around the arm, wholly capturing the enemy pirate with dense haki. Splash! More and more tendrils of earth continued being birthed from the seafloor, wrapping and crushing their lone prisoner. Within moments, Whitebeard was entirely covered in a giant mass of earth, resembling a small moon. Pebbles and debris floated down from the structure, leaving a silence behind. The nearby area was eclipsed by the ball, spreading its darkness to the edges of the walls. The Admiral made a move. Garp landed on a shaken ship, narrowing his eyes on the locked-up pirate. Shiver! The hair on the Vice-Admiral's arm stood up in instinct, alerting him to the coming chaos. Rumble! The short tranquility came to an end with a rumbling of the giant earth arm-turned moon. Dull shakes broke out as increasingly larger bits of stone rained down. Boom! With a single beat, the colossus exploded into a rain of endless bits of earth, revealing the silhouette of the unhurt Whitebeard. Creak! Becerra rose from his ship under an identical stone platform in the shape of a rising arm from under the sea. The Admiral's own arm and half of his body were covered in thick rocks as he glared at the pirate. I won't let you harm my troops any further. Whitebeard returned a grin, then protect them. He then smashed both his hands towards opposite sides as the cracks spread through the atmosphere. Becerra's mountainous defenses were against their greatest foe. Perhaps using the earth to stop a man of earthquakes was not overly efficient. A giant 200-meter-tall tsunami rose from up ahead and began to rage toward the main battalion of marine warships. Garb! Becerra roared. Whoosh! The charismatic Vice-Admiral shot and chased towards the giant wave, his metallic fist ready to pummel it. Boom! Dull explosions carried on near the other sides of the battlefield. Kaido had been on a rampage, destroying a couple of ships only to be stopped by a Vice-Admiral. His size was working against him as he had trouble keeping up with the smaller, and more agile master of Rokushiki. Only with the aid of Shuki was he able to take the marine down. I had him! Kaido roared out. Yet his roar was left on red, angering him further. Boom! Clang! Bam! Once again, sending the 100 Beast into a frenzy to unload hell upon unsuspecting marines. The clash of Whitebeard and Basara alongside the roaring seas holding down Garp gave way for the tired ship led by Shuki to reach its destination. Damien-chan, can you break open a large piece of that mountain? The woman asked in her usual playful tone. The pirate in question looked at the ring of earth trapping them in, spanning over 800 meters. Define a large piece. Shuki puffed out some smoke and casually said, as big as possible. Damien nodded and jumped into the air and towards the mountain. Tap! His hand touched the earth. A sound of pixelation broke out as the dull brown wall began to turn red with a checkered pattern, spreading in all directions. Not long after, a giant piece of pure earth was dislodged from the wall. It was around a quarter as tall as the barrier, 10 meters deep and 100 meters across. Shuki smiled at the display, perfect. She then aimed her beloved pistol at the mountain, much to Damien's confusion. His eyes zoomed in on the weapon as he saw the bullet to be fired change color. It went from the usual black to a grey hue, wrapped in some form of inconspicuous energy. Bang! The Sin Incarnate traced the bullet's trajectory as it nailed the separated mountain dead in its center. Poof! Damien's jaw almost fell at what followed. The mountain, where'd it go? Shuki winked and charmingly replied, to Marineford, of course. Damien saw the giant piece of earth simply poof out of existence and disappear, leaving a giant gap in the wall. Shuki giggled as she saw Damien's surprised appearance. The mountain, where'd it go? The woman winked in reply, to Marineford, of course. Shuki held up her trusty pistol, showing it off to her young friend. My gun ate the roulette fruit and can shoot 6 different types of bullets. She began listing them out, counting with her fingers. Piercing rounds that can rip through thick steel like butter. Incendiary rounds that burn upon impact. Explosive rounds that go boom boom. Medicinal rounds that can heal non-fatal injuries. Storage rounds that can create a little space to store things. And lastly, warping rounds that can teleport objects to a place I've left a marker behind. Damien gave a wry smile, let me guess, you can combine them all as you please. Era, you're giving away my secrets now. Both of the pirates halted in talk as another voice resounded the battlefield. Dreaded devastation. A giant cone-shaped column of earth shot forward at speeds faster than a normal human could react to. It shot towards the giant pirate as he smashed his fist to meet the attack. Crack! A crack broke through the air as the coming earth began to crumble away. You don't learn, do you, Basara? Whitebeard said with an annoyed sigh. The admiral gritted his teeth in impatience as he saw the results. His eyes were then drawn to the now opened gap in his mountainous defense as the Rock's ship sailed ahead. A marine warship was about to commence bombardment but instead was pummeled by a flying figure that crashed upon it. Worororo! You're falling apart, Navy. Looks like you couldn't protect them. Newgate pointed his naginata towards the admiral and gave an ultimatum, you can either send Garp to take them down, but that would leave the other marines to sink from our fight. Or you let them go and we fight another day. Basara's face twisted with a scowl. Being threatened by a pirate in such a manner brought great shame to his position as an admiral. Yet it was also his position as an admiral that calmed him down. He pulled out a transponder snail, expressionlessly sending an order, all forces, stand down. Whitebeard gave a small grin as he shot forward to the pirate ship, leaving behind a disgruntled Basara. Garp, who was extinguishing the tsunamis left, right, and center, also got the order. He saw the Rock's ship reach beyond the canyon and could only sigh. A battle at sea against a Quake man is never easy. A nearby vice-admiral began to instruct the marines, look after the wounded, the rest of you, rescue the ones who fell to sea before dash. No need. Basara raised his hands with an annoyed face. Rumble. The ground shook incessantly and under the eyes of the shaken marines was hope. A giant platform, equal to the size of the entire canyon, over a handful of kilometers in radius, rose from the depths. The men, the ships, and even the sea kings below were uplifted and placed on the hard earth, rescued from sinking into the depths. A single motion to birth a spanning land mass. Garp walked ahead and began directing, look after the wounded and collect the martyred, they deserve a funeral. Roger that. The vice-admiral then ordered a rookie marine, go get me my rice crackers. Why yes sir. It seemed this little skirmish had come to an end. A while later, Damien rested at the edge of the ship. They had sailed beyond the ring of earth, leaving the marines behind. An admiral is quite the challenge. Whitebeard was devouring liters of sake as he heard the words. Gururera. That Basara is like a mad dog, but he has enough sense not to gamble too many marines just for us. Especially considering the state of the new world now, Shuki added. Damien's ears perked at her words and he asked, Can you give me some more details on that? The woman hummed in response and began the info dump. Well, quite a few big names are roaming the seas. The government ranks each with their World Threat Index. It outlines a pirate's threat level from 1 to 5, she said. There are quite a few in the highest level, but 3 of them take the cake. The overlords of the seas, Damien said from his past knowledge on the subject. Shucky nodded, nowadays people are claiming a 4th, being Captain Rocks, but the Rocks pirates aren't all that centralized like the overlords. The boss is on the pirate island of Hakinosu, full A lead, beehive, with a pack of rabid dogs, but they aren't the type to go around conquering lands, rather, they prefer to loot, kill, and destroy everything in their path. Whitebeard grumbled at her words, not disagreeing with them but not liking the reality either. The government's hands are full with all these bad names and things are getting even more hectic. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to take down an overlord or 2 to calm the seas a little. Are we headed to Hakinosa to build the ship then? Damien asked. Shucky shook her head, we're going to Naufragium Island. Puff. A cloud of smoke swarmed out from her mouth as she continued. A man reached out to Captain Rocks a few months ago, saying he would fulfill his wish to make a behemoth of a ship if we could gather the proper materials. Damien raised an eye at the news, is he credible enough? Shucky nodded, Naufragium Island was once called the haven of shipwrights. Was. A look of pity appeared on the woman's face as she explained. It was reduced to rubble in an unknown siege that took place under the cover of night a couple of decades ago. Most of the shipwrights either died or fled to paradise. I hear many were recruited to Water 7. She gave out a small sigh. One man still remains there, he's the one who called the captain. His name is Quinton Hammer. 4 days later. Fleet Admiral's office, Marine Ford. 7 people were seated upon a wide, round table. Each had a marine uniform, 6 men and 1 woman. The room was white with blue accents, each side had an open window aside from the entrance. A cool breeze of fresh air entered the room while the marines sat in solemn silence. Garp, Basara, a deep voice bellowed. One of you better tell me why there was a damn mountain in my office. Naturally, the one who spoke was Fleet Admiral Kong. The admiral in question sat in silence. The other man, however, wasn't in the same dull mood. Bwahahaha, a boisterous laugh broke apart the seriousness. Kong-san, don't get so angry, these things happen now and then. Garp was munching on his favorite rice crackers as he, rather rudely, devoured the snacks amongst such prestigious marines. A vein popped in Kong's forehead, almost as if it was about to burst. Garp, show some respect to the fleet admiral. The man voicing his annoyance was Garp's good friend, Sengoku. These Rocks pirates are getting far out of hand. It was a different voice, one calmer and softer than Sengoku's. It came from a muscular man wearing sharp marine attire. Short purple hair alongside a heroic posture. Vice Admiral Zephyr. Image of Zephyr, in Discord. What is your input, Tsuru? The fleet admiral looked at the woman to his side. She was a beautiful woman with turquoise hair tied in a ponytail. She held the title of Vice Admiral, yet she was known not for skills as a fighter, but her brains as a tactician. Images of Tsuru, in Discord. The woman squinted her eyes. We have tried to hide their emergence, but it's getting more and more difficult. Many reverie attendants have shared their impatience with our handling of the situation. She gave out a slight sigh. The overlords have already kept our forces stretched, and now the Rocks have grown stronger with the addition of the 2 demonic rookies. Flutter. Tsuru placed 2 bounty posters on the table. With the big names already under Rock's flag, I'm afraid only the crew's terrible camaraderie can slow them down. At this rate, they will amass a force that can rival the world itself. Kong exhaled while tapping his finger on the table. Sengoku then chimed in, with the intel from CP1 about the Black Death gathering materials to build a ship, we can infer their next moves. Zephyr looked to the side of the Grand Line map and zoomed in on a single island. The island of shipwrights that was left in the dust, that's their goal, he chimed in. The intel brought a silent man to speak up. Send me, I'll go and destroy that island once and for all, Basara declared. Kong looked at the brown-clothed admiral and shook his head. I need you and Sengoku on standby, it seems Borealis is making a move. He then glanced at Zephyr and took something out of his pocket. It was a transponder snail, bright gold in color. Kong gave it to Zephyr. You know what to do. The purple-haired Vice Admiral just sank into his seat without a reply, pocketing the device. Tsuru saw the expression and ignored it. It seems we need to review the bounties of the Rocks, especially that of the Demon Rookies duo. The New World, the ruins of Naufragium Island. The constantly repaired Rocks ships eventually docked onto the Naufragium Island. The 4 pirates stepped off and glanced at the island. Reduced to rubble was an accurate description, Damien muttered. The tiny island was quite ruined. Nothing but cracked earth and broken land. The trees were long dead, and the grass receded, leaving behind a barren land. It was quite obvious that a flourishing population once existed here by the site of the ruined and revenge buildings and homes. The overgrown moss and vines were the only colors left in this place. The nature here is void of color and life, Damien thought as he felt the silence of the voice of all living things. Looks like the tavern has some life, Whitebeard said, though he was already walking towards it from the start. Kaido joined in as the two went into the pub. Shuki poked Damien in the ribs, don't even think of bailing on me, you're coming with me to find this hammer fellow. She dragged the rookie pirate towards the ruined town for the shipmaker in question. A while later. This should be it, Shuki announced. The two were standing before a broken-down house with pieces of the walls missing. A small well and ruined fences nearby. At least the grass here has some life, Damien said. Image of the house, in Discord. The pirate duo walked ahead and towards the door. Creak. Damien had locked onto the man's presence for a while now. He was seated on a barrel by the front yard, gazing at the sky. With a size of around 12 feet, 3.66 m, a burly figure with muscles. Damien asked. Are you Quentin Hammer? The man looked down with a stern expression. Depends who's asking. We're asking. Who's we? Depends who's asking. I'm asking. Who are you? Depends who's asking. We're asking. Who's we? Depends who's asking dash. Shuki broke the loop with a single word, rocks. The man narrowed his eyes on the pirates, taking a strong puff of his cigar. You've got the right guy. Damien shrugged at Shuki, he would have given in soon either way. The woman rolled her eyes and then glanced at the man. The dark-skinned man had a wild look. Overgrown beard and hair that linked together to give a rather feral look. His forehead was popping with veins from madness. He breathed out clouds of smoke through his nose, reveling in the cigar's taste. He's missing a few screws. Image of Quentin Hammer, in Discord. You got the stuff. Shuki eyed the man's crazed eyes and slowly nodded. Bang bang bang. Her pistol fired as a small thrice a triangular portal-like construct appeared in the ground. Plop. Soon, a handful of giant logs of thick wood shot out. Alongside a rain of crimson ore, separated into large blocks and set in neat rows. Hammer slowly walked ahead and eyed the goods. Adam's oak, nice stuff. His eyes then locked on the blood-red ore. This is dash. Gulp. An unconscious reflex from the shipbuilder resounded as he touched the ore with his blistered and scarred hands. The previous weariness was instantly replaced with delight. Oh, it's beautiful. Shuki saw the man grab the ore as if it could grow legs and run away from him and rolled her eyes. Ahem, she audibly cleared her throat, drawing the man's attention. Can you make do with this? I don't want to come all the way here on a man's delusion. Hammer looked at the woman and squinted his eyes. Hamo, he broke out in a laugh. You're not wrong to call it my delusion, but that was before the tragedy of this island. Hammer shook his head and elaborated, you see, I was once a young lad with dreams to make a ship that would conquer the seas. The man's crazed eyes soon grew melancholy in nostalgia. But it fell apart, I couldn't make the final leap to conquer this chaotic sea. I grew old and tired, so I departed all my knowledge to the new generation, my son who I picked up from the sea. We father and son were happy. Hammer's eyes returned to their frenzy state, almost glowing red in anger. But they came, the celestial dragons. They wanted a ship fit for a god. Boom. Hammer's fist crashed onto the ground, enough to draw blood. I rejected them and directed them elsewhere, but they didn't even hear me out. Those bubbled-headed scum, they ordered the dogs of Cipher Pole to take my 7-year kid as a slave and dragged him away. Fury flashed by Hammer's face as he spat out, my punishment was what followed, they set an island bounty. The next morning everything was in ruins. My entire life's work was ripped apart over a single night. The giant man fell to his knees in a moment of weakness. My hate for them has built up for decades, I'm old now, my son is probably long dead, and now I only have one purpose, I want to see the world government burn. The manic expression mixed with the maddened eyes left Hammer a broken man, yet his words carried an air of determination. Damien heard the soliloquy and felt a hint of pity. Shuki continued to smoke while questioning, you want to bet that Captain Rocks will fulfill your purpose? Hammer looked up and nodded. Yes, if I have to make a deal with the devil then so be it. I will do what he wants, I'll make him a titan of a ship to conquer these seas and bring hell to the world nobles. Damien still had some doubt, you couldn't make it then, how can you make it now? Hammer stood up. His eyes now shining bright and lost hope and maniacal. A pulse of pressure soon rippled out of the broken man in grey-colored waves. The mad shipwright balled his fists so hard that it began to draw blood. An insane grin spread across his face, because now I can put my life on the line for it. Damien and Shuki both felt the booming presence of the shipbuilder who had fallen from grace. A few crows on the nearby dead trees had fallen to the ground, unconscious. Shuki eventually nodded, very well then.